Bonsoir à tous, j'espère que vous passez une bonne journée. Kumaraguru College of Liberal Arts and Science is an initiative of the Kumaraguru Institution. It is a vibrant space for education and holistic learning and strives to provide opportunities that would manifest the dreams of those aspiring students who study here. This place understands each student's uniqueness and helps them to discover, explore, learn, and exhibit their talents and goals. Learning here includes academics, language, moral values, along with cultivating individuals' interests. It is a space where the students are encouraged liberal learning and critical thinking with cosmopolitan worldviews. The quality of education, lifestyle that includes fine arts, leadership council, entrepreneurship, and so on makes this institution a dream for many students. This institution values sincerity, passion, creativity, curiosity, and progression. Now, I'd like to walk you through our topic life and literature. What happens when mortals immortalize? Literature is like the teaspoon of coffee powder that we add in a cake mix. It enhances the chocolatiness of the cake rather than standing out and making the entire cake taste like coffee. The impact of literature in our lives is undeniable, even though we fail to realize it many a time. As C.S. Lewis quoted, literature adds to reality. It does not simply describe it. It enriches the necessary competencies that daily life requires and provides, and in this respect, it irrigates the deserts that our lives have already become. Literature thus enhances the quality of our lives. Our Madame Magdalene.
Bonsoir tous. You forget what you want to remember, and you remember what you want to forget. Quoted by Cormac MC Carthy. So today we are going to remember some Sartre, Hugo, and Zola's whom we forget in our lives with the help of our experts. I welcome our speaker, Dr. Rajeshwari Chandrasekhar, retired professor and head, Madurai Kamaraj University. Hailing from a French-speaking Pondicherry family, Madame completed her baccalaureate from Lycée Foncé affiliated to University of Rennes. In 1971, she came to Madurai University and completed a master's. She was awarded the gold medal of T.P. Meenakshi Sundaranad in 1973. In the same year, she was appointed as a lecturer in the Department of French. Between 81 to 82, she got the French Government Scholarship and did a diploma in Fleur at Sorbonne. She promoted research through her guiding n number of MPhil students and PhD scholars. Co-authored textbooks like A Votre Service, Volume 1 and 2, with CLA Fellowship, Mantra, etc. She has also translated many books from Tamil, she has translated many books into Tamil from French, like Encore 5 minutes, Le Libraire. With 30 years of experience, she metamorphosed into a French expert, making many of her students want to. I extend my warm welcome to our chief guest, Dr. Marie-Pierre Gaston, retired professor and head, Department of French, Madurai Kamaraj University. With 34 years of experience, he specializes in the areas of translation and literature. Under his guidance and expertise, he has helped 6 students to accomplish PhD and currently guiding 4 more. Monsieur has completed 2 research projects under CICT and UGC, co-authored Entrejons Volume 2 textbook. He has published and translated several renowned books, novels, and poems like Un conte de Virama Muniver, Le Crépuscule Rouge, et Le Voile Royal. Translations of Naladir is an outstanding one. Both experts have received the AITF Award for Excellence for Service in promoting French in India. Welcome you both to the dais once again. So now I'll leave the speech to Monsieur. Monsieur.
To all of you. Learner Principal Dr. Vijayaraj Kennedy, my most admirable and exemplary professor and pedagogue Dr. Rajeshwari Chandrasekhar, National Professor in the Department of French, Madurai Kamaraj University, Mr. Leo, Head Department of Visual Communication, Kumaraguru College, Mr. Bharat, Technical Support, Miss Magdalene, our beloved student and assistant professor, Department of French, Kumaraguru College, Lisa, student representative, my colleagues, friends, students and research scholars. I deem it a great honor to chair this webinar wherein my professor and guide, Madam Rajeshwari Chandrasekhar, is the main speaker. Magdalene has already introduced Madam Rajeshwari Chandrasekhar, but I would like to add few words about her. I am proud and fortunate to be a student in both MA and MPhil in French, and I was also privileged to be a first research scholar to do my PhD under her guidance. In this context, I would like to specially felicitate Magdalene for having chosen the right person for this webinar. Yes, she is the apt person because everyone knows Madame Rajeshwari Chandrasekhar only as a French professor, but she has also done an MA in English literature and she has published several papers and articles in connecting in comparative interlingual research papers linking Tamil, French, and English. Okay, now let me pass on to the main topic. The main theme of this webinar is life and literature. What does it mean? It means the relevance of literature in our daily life. Yes, to explicit this concept of the theme, I would like to explain the existentialism philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre. What is existentialism? Existentialism is to search meaning of one's life. Yes, according to certain philosophers who believe in God, like Kierkegaard and Marcel Gabriel, they thought that man has to find meaning for their life in God. But Jean-Paul Sartre, was a philosopher of 20th century and the way an atheist differs from. According to him, Mr. Bharat, can you put the slide? Can you please put the slide? I quote, l'homme pour justifier son existence et donner un sens à sa vie ne peut compter que sur lui-même. What does this quote say? What does this quote say? It says that man, to justify his own existence and give meaning for his life, can only depend on himself, cannot depend on anyone else. He has the full responsibility for his life. That means man is forced to face each and every in his life and take proper decision and act and accordingly in such a way that it enhances his human dignity. Therefore, we see that action is very, very important for man. When Sartre once again says, I quote, l'homme est ce qu'il fait. That is, it is action which determines and gives meaning for our existence. Without action, we are nothing. Our words may be only empty words. Unless we prove our words through our actions, the words become empty. So actions are very, very important for to find a meaning for our existence. So I would like to show you some examples from history. Let us take for example Mahatma Gandhi. His philosophy was non-violence. Through his philosophy of non-violence, he was able to fight and achieve the independence of our nation. So that brought him the name of Father of our nation. Thus he found meaning for his life. Let us take Mother Teresa. For her it is humanity. According to her, to serve the destitute, it is to serve God. So, service to service to humanity was very much appreciated, and she even went got the International Award of Nobel Prize. So this service to humanity got her the name of Angel of Destitutes. So that gave her the meaning for her life. Now the two characters from history whom I have quoted are positive characters. So let me quote one negative character, that is Hitler. It is true, we all know that Hitler was a torturer, a great tyrant, and a racist. So that earned him the name as the worst dictator in world history. So that is a negative meaning for his life. So, okay, now let us come to the point. So what does concept of philosophy have any relevance to our own life? I would like to especially address the youth, the research scholars, and young students who are watching this webinar. You are at you are about to choose your own career. So now it is your responsibility to choose your career. You may take your guidelines or advice from your parents, from your teachers, from your well-wishers, from your friends. Yes, they are very important, but that is not enough. Most important, according to me, is you have to make an, an analysis and research of your inborn and hidden talents in you. And if you try to build up your career according to your talent, you will be sure certainly successful. So, if you are successful in your career, you are to be praised. At the same time, if you fail in your career, again you have to be blamed. So you are totally responsible for your career, for choosing your career. So in short, it is our actions which determines our life. So man is nothing but action. Even in my life, I can add that my parents wanted me to become a doctor, but during my UG, I found that I had the hidden talent of being a teacher. So I chose the career of being a teacher, but whether I was a successful teacher or not, I leave it to my students to judge. So I am sure that you will be eagerly waiting to hear the main speaker, Madam Rajeshwari Chandrasekhar. So I do not want to take a lot of time. So I pass on the mic to Madam Rajeshwari Chandrasekhar. Thank you so much for my patient hearing. Thank you.
Wise words. So let me now start the program by thanking first the principal of Kumaraguru College of Liberal Arts and Science, Dr. Vigila Kennedy, Mr. Leo, the head of the visual communication. My thanks to Lisa, students coordinator, to Bharat, our technical support, to Magdalene, assistant professor of class, who is the person behind this great initiative. And last but not the least, to all my students, friends, and well-wishers. It is a real pleasure for me to be associated to this webinar because it's a kind of pilgrimage that I make into my books, my readings, and my literary ideas. So the topic given today is life and literature. You will all accept with me that it is a very, very broad spectrum topic. But in general, what we mean literature, it is written work because it comes from the Latin literatura, which is writing formed with letters. And if you make a little bit of research, you will discover that the earliest forms of written literature are from ancient Egypt, from a place called Sumeria. The texts were engraved in wet clay in a language called cuneiform 4,000 years before Christ. But this is kind of history research. But in our personal experience, what is literature? Because we are going today to think together on this topic. And at the outset, I wish to state that this journey is not going to explore in depth the multifacet of this question. And the views we are expressing here are simply drawn from personal experience. My desire would be rather to create a little sparkle that could kindle our personal approach or raise a new awareness. I think personally that the first forms of literature familiar to us are first oral or verbal. For instance, you may remember the first song that your mom sang for you, the lullaby, or the lullaby sung by a grandma. The rhymes, the school rhymes that you have learned, the stories that have enchanted your childhood. The second exposure is, of course, religious literature that you have heard in your homes, in your visit to worship places. And then, third place comes the school. Once you are starting your primary education, whether it is English, Tamil, or French, or any language, you will be exposed to rhymes, songs, stories, and gradually, with development, with maturity, you will learn to appreciate what is really book reading. So, here I wish to quote a great astronomer, Galileo, who said, "You cannot teach a man anything. You can only help him to find it within himself." And I think here I am close to what Pierre has just expressed. Literature is a mirror to the society. The writer, any writer, is empowered by his inspiration, his imagination. And the writer uses a very powerful tool, you have guessed it, it's language. He uses the rich tapestry of language, and his pen becomes an ultimate instrument, even a weapon. Literature deals with unspoken, hidden emotions that are extracted, analyzed, and then the masterpiece is created. Beauty and majesty appeal to our heart, to our mind. Here I wish to give two examples of French literature. They are quite old because they are of the 16th century, but they are really connected with life. It's a way of demonstrating how life and literature are connected. My first example would be Ronsard, whom many of you may know. He has written many poems, among which the Sonnets for Helen. In one of those sonnets, he says, "Live now, believe me, wait not till tomorrow. Gather the roses of life today. Vivez si m'en croyez, n'attendez à demain. Cueillez dès aujourd'hui les roses de la vie." So it's an invitation to enjoy, to live the present moment, to be happy now, not worried about the past, not getting stressed by the future. Be happy now. The second example is from again 16th also. It's from Francois de Malherbe. He has written a condolence letter poem to his friend Dupérier, who has lost his daughter at a very young age. It was a premature death. So he says, again I quote, a rose she has lived as long as roses live, the span of a morning. And in French it says, et rose elle a vécu ce que vivent les roses, l'espace d'un matin. So this is just a little point to show you how life and literature are connected. It is a intimate connection in with life because the subject matter, the raw material is provided in life and it echoes our dreams, our hopes, our aspirations. But you can also find expression of pains, of sorrows, of anxieties, failures. I think the best and the worst can be found in any book. There is no thought, no emotion that has not been expressed in prose, poetry, or drama. I think that literature has also a mission because right from the 17th century, French literature wanted to entertain and to educate. In French, they say plaire et instruire, joindre l'utile à l'agréable. When you read something, it should be useful, but at the same time, it should be entertaining. And the writer is the privileged person, he is the prophet, he is the chosen one who has the responsibility of shaping destinies because he is sowing precious seeds. And those seeds are the thoughts, the ideas. And language creates that attraction, that beauty. Literature helps to understand the complexity of life, of human nature, because by the in depth psychological analysis of heroes and heroines. And here I am going to again take my examples from French literature. And for that, we are going to provide you a kind of little gallery of portraits. Unfortunately, we are not going to go in depth into all those authors or their works, but just to demonstrate that all the subject matter of these works are life, whether it is the life of the author or their contemporary society in which they lived. And because they wanted to send a message to the not only to the contemporary but to the future generation, they created those masterpieces. So I would request Bharat to post the portrait of the author, and we are starting with somebody called Montaigne. Bharat, can you please put Montaigne? Yes. And you can see the dates, so like that you can fix them in the time, you can understand which century they belong. And he has written a particular book called Les Essais de Montaigne, which is very well known, where the subject matter, he says, La matière de mon livre, c'est moi. He talks about himself. Next work is L'Avare de Molière. So Molière doesn't need any introduction. everyone knows about him. So Molière, very important playwright of the 17th century, one of our great classics. And I am quoting here two of his works, particularly L'Avare, the miser, and Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme, which is the upstart, the neo-rich. You know that today we see in life so many neo-rich people, and sometimes how ridiculous they are. And Moliere, in the 17th century itself, he has found that one of the flaw of the society was this category of neo-rich people. The third work per author we are going to see is La Bruyère, and the dates are there. His works is Les Caractères de la Bruyère. Les Caractères de la Bruyère is a series of portraits, very short portraits, but where one human defect is analyzed, but in a very light manner. So it is a bit funny, comic, but it makes you think. And you have very, very famous portrait, Giton le riche, Fédon le pauvre, Arias le hableur, etc., etc. So it's very interesting because it was depicting the defects of that 17th century society. Now we are switching over to the century of enlightenment, le 18e siècle, le siècle des philosophes, le siècle de l'encyclopédie, and le siècle qui a préparé la Révolution française de 1789. So here you can see that every writer had a social responsibility because they were realizing that France was sinking under absolute monarchy. The coffins of the country were empty and the people were hungry. They need to eat, but they were fed up and the revolution is getting prepared, brewing. And these writers had a very big role with their pen. They gave ideas to people. So Montesquieu advocated the division of powers, legislative, executive, judicial power. He was against absolute monarchy. And he also wrote a very light and entertaining piece, which is called Les Lettres Persanes. And in that, it's a series of letters. I think it was around 150 letters of two Persians, Uzbek and Rika, who travel inside France and who make remarks. And it's all caricatures and satires about the then France of that time. Our next author will be Rousseau, again a great pioneer, a great thinker, who is a little bit different than the other philosophers of the 18th century because he was a loner, and he is the father of the French Romanticism. The pre Romantic features have been expressed by Rousseau in two major works, Les Confessions d'un enfant du siècle et les rêveries du promeneur solitaire, and La Nouvelle Héloïse. If you probe into those writings, you will guess that the Romanticism was already there. And it is a very, very enriching experience to go through those works. And life, his life, and the surrounding life has provided all that subject matter. Now we are visiting another author, very important also, Victor Hugo. Victor Hugo, who doesn't know him, who has not heard about him? And he has the privilege of living the whole century, 1802, 1885. And he has written everything like prose, poetry, drama, essay, everything. But his poems are very, very famous. So we are not going to go deep into that. He is a genius. On le compare, he is often compared to the great genius Pablo Picasso in terms of creativity, in terms of energy, in terms of genius. So now let's go to another 19th century writer, Flaubert, who has written masterpiece Madame Bovary. You have Balzac. Bharat, can you show us Balzac? Yeah, Balzac, who is the author of La Comédie Humaine, and two important masterpieces, Eugénie Grandet and Le Père Goriot. If you have the time or the occasion to go through these novels, you will understand that that is life. You can see the life of a father who loves to infinite level his daughters, Le Père Goriot. Eugénie Grandet, again, the story of a miser and how that vice has influenced their life. Now we go to another very important person of the 19th century, Émile Zola, who is the representative of a movement called Le Naturalisme, where science provided a lot of insight for writers. And particularly, he has written one of the very well known novel, L'Assommoir, and he studies alcoholism and how alcoholism is destroying human life. We go to another important author, Stendhal, who is well known for his writing Le Rouge et le Noir, and where this is the kind of 19th century where you have the romanticism, realism, but also the clash of the societies, where to come up in society was very, very important. So whether the means are right or wrong, how do you access to that positions are all studied in Le Rouge et le Noir. Then, of course, you have 20th century examples. I wish to quote just two. Again, as I said, want of time. Albert Camus, that everybody knows because of his great works, especially everyone must have heard about L'étranger de Camus and also La Peste de Camus, because now with this COVID pandemic, it is a very, very um, shocking writing, because you can understand that it can be applied to the COVID. And last but not the least, we will stop with this gallery with Eugène Ionesco avec Rhinocéros. Again, it is also a new form of literature, such in pièce de théâtre, where major themes are introduced to the public, but in a kind of in the travesty of something absolutely new to the reader with an animal, but the core theme is totally different. It's about l'humanisme. So you have an idea of this long gallery of authors who are a proof that life has provided all these thinkers the subject matter to write those masterpieces. I think the literature has an intimate connection with life, and as you know, it explores how to be human. We can understand through literature other societies, other cultures, and we acquire a very wide general knowledge by which we acquire capital values like freedom, tolerance, respect, compassion, solidarity, because this powerful storytelling has a deep impact in our lives. and it keeps alive in us a vital faculty, an essential power, the power of thinking. So I think literature is very important in our life because it constantly grooms us to think better, to think in a right way, to think in a deep way. So, as we go in the journey of our thinking, we realize now that with technology, with the proliferation of the printing and everything, literature has gone beyond the usual forms. It is huge, unexpected, and it goes beyond printed materials now. It encompasses not only literature as pure literature, criticism, literary criticism, art criticism, the travelogues, all the things you can find in the media, the film script, the food critics, journalism, everything is now a form of literature. And let us not forget the great electronic literature now that we have. So every day when you have a morning message in just 5 lines, that is also literature, but it is in your WhatsApp. It is not a big, thick book like I have mentioned so far. So I believe that one can discover literary pearls in anything, in anyone, or anywhere, because you have developed a certain intuition, you have developed a certain sensitivity towards your surroundings, your settings. So, life, it means not only carrying beauty, romance, it means sometimes to awake, to arise. And the purpose of the literature sometimes is not always beauty, poetry, it is sometimes to shock. Very often, the 20th century, at least the French 20th century, resorted to that. It wanted to shock, to question, to destroy the stereotype and go beyond. So, in short, I can say that exposure to literature is a privilege because it enrich our life. Because of this additional dimension, you have more in-depth knowledge, practical knowledge, flexibility, and you can adapt what you have found in your reading. You can find it and you can adapt it to your personal life. Literature is a timeless legacy that has been passed to you. And I think personally, it is a perennial source of learning. I have tried to compress in a very short talk what I think about literature and life. But it is, as I said, a very huge topic which requires much more time. And I'm sorry about making it shorter because we are running short of time, and I am eagerly waiting to answer to the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. It was like a fantastic speech. So I request our participants to ask your thoughts or questions to our experts. So, ma'am, till they ask question,
Yes.
which work you like the most and why? Or which work you refer for us to read it at least once
Do you mean in century wise or in general?
in general, ma'am?
Very, very modern, up to date books. There are so many, because there are, as you know, French has gone beyond its frontiers. It is, they say in French, le français a débordé l'hexagone. L'hexagone, it is the France. You see, the geographical shape of France reminds you like a hexagon. So France is now, French is now spoken in so many other countries, and all these countries have literature. There is Canadian literature, there is African literature, there is Mauritian literature, etc. And if you see, there is even a literature which is in Pondicherry, which is there. Mm. So you can, if you are interested in Francophone literature, you can explore those writers like Canadian literature or Mauritian literature. You have Le Voile de Draupadi. You have other books that I was mentioning. Encore 5 minutes de Françoise Loranger, Gérard Besset, all these kind of writers. But in France at the moment, there are so many modern writers. They don't belong to any movement or anything. And there are lots of black writers who have been promoted. They are publishing, and it's a very huge industry going on. So you can, if you give me some time, I can probe into some titles and let you know, not immediately. But if we go to the great classics, if you haven't read yet La Peste de Camus, if you haven't yet read L'étranger de Camus, you must read. If you haven't read Huis clos de Jean-Paul Sartre, pièce de théâtre, these are the must reads. If you claim yourself to teach French, to be a teacher of French, you must know all these things, because it's these are the classic ones. Because there is a big difference between the classic writers and the modern ones. Modern writers, the movement is still on. You see, every month there are publications, and you can always pick a book at random and read. But the classics, they are already in the library shelf, so you can anytime you can go and pick and read. If you take the sonnets of Ronsard, it's a bit medieval French, it's a bit difficult, but nowadays there must be some kind of paraphrase editions, so you can easily understand. Donc les sonnets de Ronsard are beautiful. Victor Hugo, it is a mind that you can explore. Les Contemplations, Lamartine, Victor Hugo, Musset, Vigny, all these people I haven't mentioned because I have no time. So,
Yes.
uh, if you take, for instance, the poem La Mort du Loup, the lesson of Stoicism given by Vigny, by taking the example of a wolf who sacrifices his life for his family. That is also life, you see. But
Yes, ma'am.
instead of making a kind of dry sermon, he takes the example of a hunting scene. And there is a wolf with his partner and small babies, baby wolves. And he feels that the hunters are coming. So he is kind of blocking the way for the hunters. He sacrifices himself, leaving the time for his family to escape. And finally, the second part of the poem is, he says, man, he addresses to man. He says, man, please take example on this wolf. Gémir, pleurer, prier et lâche. He says to moan, to grumble. All this is a coward action. Just do your duty in the line destiny has designed for you, and then die. That's the advice he gives.
Yes. So
See,
all these things.
even pray, he says, even to pray is an act of cowardice. You don't need to pray. You just follow the path that destiny has given.
Yes. So even though we are teaching part one, I feel like introducing some small literature parts will be really helpful for the students. So over
Yes.
here, we have few questions from our participants. Like
Yeah.
one question from Princess Cassie Adrian: is there
Yeah.
such thing as true literature, or everything that is written is considered already literature? What are your thoughts about this, ma'am? Can you
Can
pop
you
that up?
can you come again? I don't follow the question.
Is there such thing as true literature?
Yeah. True literature.
Yeah. So,
Mm.
or everything that is written is considered already literature. What are your thoughts on this, ma'am?
Nowadays it looks that whatever is written is something printed, so you don't consider that as literature, isn't it?
Yes.
When you want to give the seal of literature, it should appeal to something noble, something beautiful, some aesthetic thing, then only you can consider it as literature. If it is just something verbal, it is just a piece of speech or a dialogue or something like that. Suppose that what we speak now, our dialogue, you can't say this is literature, it is just communication.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
literature is a kind of higher register of language, of ideas, and it should create an impact on the consumer. Then only you can say that it is literature.
Yes, ma'am. So we have a few more questions here. So
Yeah.
Suraj Kumar is asking, what is the best book that you have read to sir and ma'am?
Okay, it's a difficult question because several we have found several things as beautiful, and and here I wish to say that there is the book that you are studying or you are teaching, but the person who teaches matters a lot, because I had the privilege of having wonderful teachers, whether it was in in high school or in university. So they made us appreciate the work. They extracted the beauty of the book by by making us focus on the language, on the poetry, on the plot of the story, on the creation of the characters. So there is a whole work which leads you to literary appreciation. So in that context, I think we were very privileged to have that opportunity. So there are many things that we liked, whether it is poem, I would say les poèmes de Victor Hugo, les poèmes de Jean-Jacques Prévert, hein, les poèmes de Baudelaire, de Rimbaud, de Mallarmé. Bit difficult, those 19th century poetry, because they enter in the symbolist movement. It is not as simple as romantic movement, but still how they with the use of the words and the symbols, they have created a poem. Yeah. So it's beautiful, this 19th century poem. And if you go to authors like Emma Bovary, Flaubert, or Zola, there are many titles we can't say one book I prefer that is my favorite.
Yes, ma'am.
I would not do justice to the other authors, so it's hard to say that. Yeah.
So what
La
about
Peste,
Monsieur?
La Peste de Camus, you can read that several times. and every time you will find a new interpretation. Your thoughts will think, oh yeah, it can be interpreted like that. Same thing, I think Pierre will agree with me. If you take UNESCO, it's the same thing, isn't it?
Yes, madam.
Rhinoceros can be read at different levels.
Yes,
You
madam.
can put behind la rhinocerite, that kind of disease, that kind of plague which attacks the modern society. You can put many vices, many social evils can be interpreted behind la rhinocerite. So it depends.
At times it is even misinterpreted, madam.
Yeah, and it depends on your mental makeup, on your psychology, and on your feelings when you are reading those books.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of literature, because it gives you a sky is the limit. You can read, you can interpret, you can find whatever you want, provided you are convinced that you can do something, and not say, oh, அது போர் அடிக்குது, அது என்னப்பா அது ஒண்ணுமே இல்லை, அது ஒண்ணுமே புரியல, என்ன எழுதுறான் அவன். So if you say that, you will discover nothing.
Yes, madam.
Okay.
We have to
We
be
have
So
an
what?
intellectual.
So can you speak about liberté d'expression, which is so dear to the French? Oh, thank you. So Alexis is asking about la liberté d'expression, which is so dear to the French. Yeah, as Alexis mentions that liberté, égalité, fraternité is right in the motto of the French Republic. And unfortunately, that liberty was not existing during the time of the great classics. If you take the great classics, right from the 16th century, they were all at the beck and call of some big noble aristocrat who had to either financially support them, or who, with his power and his connection, he had to sponsor, he has to patronize the writer. So if a writer doesn't express what the big aristocrats wish, he will not survive. And many writers lived in poverty. Only some lived with comfortably, but especially playwrights, because you will be surprised to understand that plays were not considered as something very good in the beginning. Then little by adding the component of entertainment, gradually it became posh to attend plays, to go to plays. Yeah? So liberté d'expression, as you know, right from the from the Middle Ages to the 18th century, the writer was not having liberté d'expression. That is why they had to use, in French they say, the subterfuge. Subterfuge means they used to have the media of fiction to vehiculate their ideas. They used some fictitious characters. If you take the example of Montesquieu, the Persians who travel across France, Uzbek and Rika, who criticize deeply the king, the pope, the officials, the judiciary, but it is to kind of shelter themselves from attacks. And actually, les lettres persanes, the Persian letters, were published in Amsterdam anonymously, because Montesquieu did not even dare to sign the work, because immediately it will be burnt. Many works of Rousseau were burnt. That's why he went and sheltered in Switzerland. So, la liberté d'expression est très importante, but elle n'a pas été facile à acquérir. It was not easy to acquire, and only gradually it was acquired. And I think the credit goes to the 18th century writers. They were the people who really pioneered that liberty of expressions.
So we have another question from Shanmuga Priya Tangapandian. With the
Yeah.
present life of Zoom and social distancing, what literature or a specific book in particular will you suggest us to read or practice Nalavi Kotitian?
As I was mentioning just before, it all depends on your personal choices, personal tendencies to choose. If you like difficult, tough ideas, you can choose serious books. Like, for instance, you can choose to read again La Peste de Camus or Huis Clos, or there are uh, plays of Camus called Le Malentendu, which is even tougher. Le Malentendu, it's a mother and daughter who will kill the son. And Caligula, about the power, or Huis Clos, l'enfer c'est les autres. Hell, it is the others, he says. Huh? So it all depends on your personal views. But if you want light poems, something romantic, you can go to the 16th century sonnet or the Cassandre, sonnet for Ellen, les poèmes de Lamartine. Victor Hugo, you can go to the Contemplation, there is a whole cluster of poems. Or Notre Dame, the novel Notre Dame, Les Miserables, uh, Le Rouge et le Noir, you can see, you can read. So there are, it all depends on what you are looking for. Or you can go to the new authors, as I said, Francophone writing. You can choose so many authors among them. There is a Mauritius writer called Karpanan Marimuthu. He has written interesting books. I don't remember all the titles, but if you just Google, you will find their works. Hmm? So there are very a huge variety of books. So it all depends what you want, what you are searching for, and then you can find out.
Yes, ma'am. So we are having the question from Jeeva Ratnam Gurusamy, ma'am.
Yeah.
Students today have lost the reading habit. How to motivate them to read again?
That's a very good question, because very nowadays the common thing you hear everywhere, oh, I was so busy, no, I don't have time. Okay. Always people are busy, they have never time. But if you see, people are very busy with the WhatsApp and Facebook and all those things. That's fine, because with due respect to the digital and electronic communication technology, I I have great regards for that, because otherwise this webinar would not have happened, isn't it? So great kudos to all that. But I think literature is some reading books is very important. And please, please, those who have young children, please instill that habit to your children, because without reading there is no writing skills, and there is no communication skills neither, and maybe there is also less of social skills altogether. So you will agree with me that we are what we are today because of our reading habits. if
Yes,
i if I take my personal example, I was brought up in the days where everything was old fashioned. I was belonging to a very strict orthodox family where we were not allowed to go anywhere except to the school, temple, occasionally grandmother's house. That's it. Full stop. So always reading books. And in school, it was a must. Every week we had to read a book and we had to present that book. So it's a question of personal choice. So I respond to Jiva. So you have to prioritize. I know that we are all busy, we have so much of work. So please dedicate, you just think 24 hours. Can't you dedicate half an hour or 1 hour time to read? You choose a book, go slowly, Take your own pace, but finish the book. You can be member of a library, or you can buy so many second-hand books on eBay and all those things, or exchange books between friends, yeah, and then read. You can even form a small group, reading group, uh, like two or three people. You read a book, you exchange the books, and then you meet and you discuss about the books. These are interesting ways of spending time, and it will go a long way. It will really, really create a new dimension for you, rather than all the time talking about cinema, fashion, jewelry. I have nothing against all these things. I have passed all these things also, but they were not my priorities. Because if these things alone are your priorities, you can, if you are a big fashion designer or a jewelry designer, or I don't know, an event manager, it can go a long way. But being an ordinary person, just focusing on this will not help you. So if you have young children at home, please make them understand the importance of writing. Because whatever WhatsApp message you send and all that, if you face an interview, I think Alexis has sent us some interviews about IAS interviews model. I think those who have gone through that must have seen what is the extent of knowledge that people expect you to have. How will you have the knowledge if you don't read? You understand?
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
in those interviews, they are not going to ask what is the latest dress that the superstar was wearing, or what is the latest tune that he is singing. The topics are vast and huge. So it is a question of choice, of personal discipline, to choose to dedicate 1 hour or half an hour of reading every day. It can be anything. It can be newspaper, it can be a newspaper, it can be a book, it can be a religious literature, it can be anything. But you have to impose yourself that discipline.
I guess there's a question from La Serena. She's from
Mhm.
Slovakia. So, which character from the French literature do you identify yourself with the most? This was a question asked to Monsieur Pierre personally. She have mentioned it below also.
Yeah.
So, she's asking Monsieur Pierre, which character from the French literature do you identify yourself with the most?
Identify ourselves.
I don't know.
We don't
I
identify.
don't identify myself with
Uh,
any person,
yeah.
any
So
character.
maybe
I guess,
favorite, you can say.
yeah, the
Favorite.
favorite character then.
Yeah, maybe
Your
that's what
favorite.
she meant. That's what she meant by that. We have favorite characters, we don't identify, but at the same time, we can feel like the same feelings, the same emotions from some of the heroes and heroines. We can feel,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah. So if you take, for instance, if you
I like
read,
very much Beranger in Rhinoceros.
yeah, Beranger, how he's
I like,
helpless, the
huh?
helplessness, the helplessness of Beranger in
And
front of that proliferation.
we
Yeah,
want to retain his humanism.
yeah,
Fight and accuse them even, he says, even if the whole city becomes rhinoceros, I will not become, I will remain a human being. So
yeah,
I would like to, I like this character very much. And I wish that all of us, in spite of any situation, we must try to remain a human being and not become
yeah.
rhinoceros.
Yeah,
Not become
if you take, for instance, the
animals.
character of Dr. Dr. Rieu in Camus, La Peste,
Yeah.
he is
Not
also
just
a very great inspiration. So he is an
fight against
atheist. He doesn't believe in God and everything, but at the same time, he fights till the end to save human lives. And he is so wise, so great. And that there is a passage where I don't remember who is asking Rio, where did you learn all these things? How did you learn all these things, doctor? So he says, it is misery who taught me that. C'est la misère, poverty. Poverty had taught me all these things. And if you apply this to Camus' life himself, it is him, because Camus himself hailed from a very, very poor background. He lost his father. His mom was a tuberculosis patient. She was a housemaid. And he was noticed by one of his teachers who helped him to come up. Uh, So there are very great authors like that. If you take Victor Hugo, whatever he speaks of human emotion, you can relate yourself with him. When he
Yes, ma'am.
lost his daughter, when he's lost his daughter, with his grandchildren, when for anything you can understand, you can follow him. See,
So
so
we'll go with the last question for this session because
yes,
I feel like we have crossed 1 hour,
yes,
and it is from Tain Mori, ma'am.
yeah,
So, Madame Raji,
yeah.
quel, quel est le rôle des écrivains dans l'ère moderne qui fait disparaître l'humanisme?
Um, I don't get what she means, but by qui fait dissiper l'humanisme. What does she mean by that? Is she meaning that l'humanisme is disappearing?
It means the modern era, madam.
In the modern era, like some,
Le
It means
rôle de
modern era.
le rôle de l'écrivain moderne, I can understand, qui fait dissiper l'humanisme, je comprends pas très bien. Est-ce que ça veut dire que l'humanisme disparaît? Do you mean that is it disappearing, or what do you mean? I don't understand.
or which is
Don't,
enhancing the humanism, or some author who's talking about humanism or like the importance of humanism, because slowly we are we I think we are very self-conscious. We look after ourselves rather than contributing to the society, which we have got many things. So if there is any work like that, we can suggest now.
in French literature at the moment, there is so the classic, again I always see the difference between the classics. We are more talking about classic literature, but the present one, the contemporary literature, is highly dynamic. Almost every week there are publications, there are new authors coming up, and they just come with one book, one production, and all that. So the impact of literature, as I said, it is first to communicate the ideas, to spread the ideas to a vast audience. So by publishing, printing a book, you can reach the mass, you can reach thousands and millions of people, and that is one of the main ideas. And of course, when you want to spread some important ideas, whether it is political ideas or whether it is social ideas or religious ideas, the writer is mooted by that ambition to reach masses, to reach number of people. If you just talk between us, or if you have in a limited circle, those ideas will not percolate to the bigger audience. So that is the idea of all writers from time immemorial, whether it is from 16th century or even 21st century, it's the same thing. But l'humanisme, I don't get exactly what she wants to mean. I would say that, as Magdalene has said, um, more and more people are self-centered and they are not thinking about the others and all that. But even that, I will remain quite optimistic, because I think, when there is, of course, a majority of people who are selfish, but I think there is also a minority of selfless people still. You can find so many examples, especially during this pandemic time, so many people who have helped so many others, because in this time of pandemic, uh, economy completely destroyed, people becoming poorer and poorer, having no food, nothing. Still, there are people of goodwill, benevolent people who have taken the initiative. They have not waited for the government or anybody. They are still doing a lot of things. So
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think, uh, to end in an optimistic note, I would say humanism is not dead. Humanism is alive. Humanism is alive because, as I think the Bible says, Ilya, des hommes de bonne volonté. There are people, goodwill people, good faith people who are still there. And of course, it is our choice, our responsibility to be on that other camp, in that minority camp, and not be on the majority camp where there is me, myself, and I. That is the other camp, the selfish camp, where they always think about themselves, calculating, speculating, see where is their advantage. But at the same time, you would say it's a question of survival, because we are living in a society where it is the survival of the fittest.
Yes,
So, it's very hard. It's very hard. So again, it's up to us to make the measures and to mix and match and find the balance.
yes, ma'am.
So I think I have a
I think,
kind of answer to her question.
yeah. So I would like to conclude our session today, ma'am. So thank you, Madam Rajeshwari Chandrasekhar and Mr. Pierre, for bringing out so realistically the connection of our lives with literature. We start to live and breathe literature without knowing as young kids. Later, we transform the same learnings as life. I take this opportunity to thank our experts for spending their valuable time with us. I extend my thanks to Dr. Vijala Kennedy, Principal of Class, for providing us this dais, Mr. Leo, Head of Visual Communication Department, for his technical support, Lisa and brother Bharat, webinar team. Last but not the least, thanks and gratitude to all our dear participants. Bonsoir, see you all in our next knowledge sharing session. Don't forget to fill the feedback forms and leave a comment to our channel.
So thank you very much for
Thank
especially Bharat and Lisa to have helped us to make these things possible, with all the gallery of the portrait and all the introduction and everything. And thanks a lot, Magdalene, for all your support and your enthusiasm. Because as you remember, I was saying, "Oh, Zoom, StreamYard, and all. I am not familiar. I'm not very good at all that. But now I think I can manage." So you see, it's all learning. It's all learning. So, and it's all learning. It's a question of finding time, of willing to interact with people. All these things makes your life more interesting.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much,
So,
ma'am.
so for me, it was a kind of, in French, you say, une plongée aux sources. That means you go back to the sources. So for me, it was a kind of rewinding the time machine and going at the time of my teaching and the authors and all that. So it was a good exercise for me too. So
Yes,
thanks for all that and all the good words you said, Pierre, about me. And it was in a very good experience. Thanks a lot.
thank
And
you,
I
ma'am.
really liked your
me also.
examples, the
Thank
examples
you
that
for
Pierre
the
gave,
experience.
the
For
examples
me
you
also, it
gave.
was my first experience.
Now, I appreciate
Having
the examples you gave on in your speech about Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, and Hitler, about life, the connection of life and the actions. So that was good examples you gave. So thank you very much, and have a nice evening. I am going to have my lunch now. So thank you very much.
Bon appétit, madame.
Merci.
After
Bye
which
bye.
thank
Bonne
So
Michael
we
in a
can
special way
begin
because
of the live stream.
uh, for me this is again my first experience.
Okay.
First
Bonne soirée.
experience in webinar. Okay. Bonne soirée.